Issue 43. Adoption.
Mom, I'm pregnant. You're what? I'm pregnant. This can't be true. Are you sure? Yes, I've seen a doctor. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to have the baby and put it up for adoption. You have no obligation to go through with this. We could arrange an abortion. I don't want an abortion. I'm going to have the baby. We were sitting in a restaurant having dinner when this conversation took place. If anyone had told me that our daughter would get into this kind of mess, I would have questioned his sanity. She was a college student, intelligent, a loving, all-around wonderful person. In my wildest dreams, I never thought this would happen to her. I told my husband. He had a difficult time accepting it too. Her sibling knew and was supportive. The next call was to her doctor. He confirmed everything and said she was in perfect health and would probably have a normal delivery. Then I telephoned an adoption agency. That was the most difficult part. An appointment was set up for our daughter and her father and me. I was afraid my husband would fold at the last moment, but he didn't. We talked to a gentle and compassionate woman for over an hour. She assured us the baby would be placed in a loving home with parents who had been waiting for a child for many years. She made our daughter feel good about her decision and praised her mature judgment. The ensuing months were a challenge. We gave our daughter a great deal of love and emotional support. The adoption agency provided excellent counseling to prepare her for the trauma ahead. We all went through the process of dealing with grief. The denial. Was this really happening to us? The guilt. What did we do wrong? The anger. Why us? So many young women do the same thing and get away with it. Out of the whole process came the acceptance of what we couldn't change. The birth was a difficult one, but the baby was healthy, alert, and beautiful. I wept as I held my first grandchild in my arms. I knew she would not be mine for long, and I dared not become too attached to her. The new parents were ecstatic when they came to the hospital to claim their baby. There were many tears, hugs, and kisses as they left with their daughter in their arms. They promised to give her the best home ever, and I'm sure they will keep their word. Our daughter is back in college, making excellent grades, and is happy and well-adjusted. I now understand why she could never consider abortion. Why didn't I think of it before? It should have been obvious. She herself is an adopted child.
Comprehension. 1. Where were they when the conversation took place? 2. What were they talking about? 3. What did the woman suggest to her daughter? 4. Did the daughter want to have an abortion? 5. When the father was notified about the pregnancy, how did he feel? 6. What did various people do during the ensuing months? 7. Was the birth easy? 8. Describe the baby. 9. What is the daughter doing now? 10. Why does the mother think the daughter put the baby up for adoption instead of having an abortion?
Let's talk. 1. If you were medically unable to have a baby, would you adopt one? 2. If you were too poor to take care of your newborn baby, would you give him up so he could have a better life? 3. Do you think that giving up a baby for adoption, especially just so he could have a better living standard, is morally acceptable? 4. If the natural mother changes her mind and decides later to get her baby back, who do you think has the superior right to take care of the child, the natural mother or the adoptive one? 5. Do you think there is any difference between raising your own babies and adopted ones? 6. What problems can you imagine occurring if you were to bring up your own child and an adopted one at the same time? 7. Should parents tell their adopted children about the true circumstances of their birth?
Opinion samples. One, I would never give up my baby for adoption under any circumstances. Many mothers think that it can be justified because their children could then be brought up in a financially better-off family. But nothing is more important to the baby than to be brought up by its natural parents. To me, giving up a baby for adoption can never be suitable, and especially not for some paltry economic advantage. Question: what if the natural parents are too poor to take care of children adequately? Would adoption be in the child's best interest?
2. If you became pregnant and were not in a position to take proper care of the baby, what should you do? The best alternative is to apply for adoption. Adoptive parents are carefully screened for eligibility. In general, they tend to be financially well off, and there is no reason to believe that they can't be good parents. Question: what are some of the most important qualifications for adoptive parents?
Issue 43, Adoption.
People who are so concerned with stopping women from having children should be more concerned with taking care of the ones we already have.
The ones we have?
You know, collectively, that the whole world has.
You mean society should spend more money on things like immunization and children's health screening?
No, those are good ideas to be sure, but it's not what I intended.
Then what do you mean?
I mean we have an enormous problem with adoptions.
Oh, yes, I agree. Governments are making it much more difficult for prospective parents to be able to adopt.
I know that the governments mostly mean well. They're trying to protect the children from abuse.
That's right. But for the most part, adopted children are not abused. They are often treated with more loving care than natural children.
Statistically, I'm sure you're right. It's probably because the people who adopt them have given up on having children of their own, so this is the only parental option available to them.
Not all adoptive parents are childless, you know. A great many of them have children, but can't stand to realize that so many other kids need good homes.
You make them sound like stray dogs or cats.
They have a lot in common, though. Strays and orphans feel lonely and unwanted, through no fault of their own. Maybe their real parents have died, or maybe they were just too young or too poor to take care of them properly. But either way, the kids suffer from neglect.
Even if they are being properly fed and clothed, which is not always the case, believe you me, even then they are deprived of the love of a family.
Why do you suppose they are treated that way?
Lots of reasons, I suppose. The difficulty in general of raising kids. Add to this the notion that the orphans are not blood relatives, and the sense of obligation diminishes.
Some people don't even want foreign couples or people from different ethnic groups or religions to be able to look after their orphans.
That's particularly tragic when their orphans are not being looked after well, and yet there are probably millions of people around the world who would love to be given the chance to take care of them.
I've noticed that the worst places for that sort of attitude are often the same ones that most strongly discourage their own people from adopting them as well.
They care too much about ancestry and not nearly enough about the needs of little children.
The older kids have it the worst, though. Babies have an excellent chance of getting adopted. They're too young to realize their position, and I suppose some of them never find out that their own parents aren't their real ones.
It's true. The older they get, the worse their odds become. Few people want to take on some child whose personality traits are already formed. And, of course, as their opportunity diminishes, their sense of being misfits grows. They suffer more and more as time goes on.
It's particularly sad in cases where some child is almost adopted many times, but something always gets in the way. The prospective parents change their minds, or they decide to adopt someone else, or the court or government disallow them.
Yes, I can't imagine what it is like to suffer that kind of frustration, especially if you're an adolescent. Being a teenager with loving parents is hard enough in terms of figuring out your identity and your place in the world. Those natural feelings of teenage angst must be almost unbearable to an orphan.
What can be done about it, do you suppose?
Churches and governments and welfare agencies of all kinds should start public service campaigns to promote the benefits of adoption, not only for the kids, but for the adoptive parents as well.
Speaking of benefits, maybe some additional tax breaks or other kinds of subsidies should be provided to make raising them less difficult.
Right. We should all be looking for ways to make adoption easier, not ever more difficult.
Questions. 1. Why don't more people adopt? Can you think of any reasons not mentioned in the text? 2. How can they be encouraged to adopt? 3. Why do adoptive parents often become more loving than biological parents?